In this Dragon Age The Veilguard video, I'm going to be talking about my hands-on impressions with the game. I finally got it. I finally got to play. I'm going to tell you what I think. I haven't gotten all the way through the game yet, but I am a good ways into it, so we're going to get into what I think about it so far. And we're also going to talk about a little bit at the end of the video why this game might be better than Shadow of the Erdtree, if you believe Steam. Before I get into the review itself, though, I want to make it clear that it's not about bashing the game and that I didn't arrive to my conclusions before I played the game. I've been waiting to play this game for 10 years, and I wasn't going to let some executive decisions take that away from me, so here we are. What I like about the game, I like about the game. What I don't like about the game, I don't like. Many of you won't agree with me on some of my opinions, and that's 100% fine. I strongly suggest you seek out other reviews that are coming out, because this game is, frankly, polarizing. I don't think there's one truth about this game for everyone, and your expectations about this game will play a big role in what you get out of it. For instance, if you're expecting a complex or nuanced RPG, you might be disappointed. So we're going to do something a little bit different here than we normally do in review videos because I didn't have as much time to play the game. What we're going to do here is we're going to start at the end, and I'm going to tell you exactly what this game is, and then I'm going to break it down so you understand how I came to this conclusion. Dragon Age The Veilguard is essentially the equivalent of a blockbuster summer movie. Think Marvel or something like that. It comes with an incredible budget, which means you can expect outstanding production values, quippy one-liners, and enjoyment for a lot of players, but is ultimately a vacuous experience that just passes you by. While many people enjoy this type of entertainment, myself included from time to time, it doesn't have the substance to endure the test of time. In the same way that when someone asks you what is your all-time favorite movie, Marvel movies are never going to be on the list, even if you really enjoyed those movies. So let's break this down and explore just why this is. The first thing to look at is that this game is called Dragon Age The Veilguard and is a direct sequel to the previous title, Dragon Age Inquisition. By being set in this universe, there's the immediate expectation that it'll work within the established framework of the series. This includes being an RPG, dark fantasy storytelling, complex narrative, branching storylines, a party system, among other things. So when you hear someone say they don't like the character models, it's because they're clashing with the whole concept of the dark fantasy setting. Dragon Age is gritty and gut-wrenching, but when you're met with caricature NPCs and companions, they clash with your expectation instantly. This carries to almost every aspect of this game, not just the character models, whereas what you were expecting is not actually met, and it isn't bad, but it's not on par with what Dragon Age has set itself up to deliver. Narratively, we as fans come into these titles expecting branching options, abundance of choice, player agency, critical and morally difficult decision-making, and impactful consequences, and unfortunately, The Veilguard feels like a more streamlined version of someone else's playthrough of Dragon Age. That is to say, the dialogue options available are clearly meant for one specific type of player who would regularly select those options given the choice. However, very rarely did these ever resonate with myself and what I wanted to do, and by comparison, Baldur's Gate 3 has gone far out of its way to make every possible choice available to you, and that game was clearly heavily influenced by the Dragon Age series. And this issue is further exacerbated by the writing. As we pointed out in our Dragon Age Origins video recently, the BioWare team spent 2 years creating the world and creating the characters before determining the plot and writing out a story for the original title. The Veilguard is a typical case of new or different writers taking on a story they didn't write themselves and trying to finish the story in a very different style. The tone and targets of Veilguard don't match the concepts of the base material, so they struggle to deliver a story for you via dialogues because there is an inherent disconnect between the world that Veilguard inhabits and the tone it wishes to convey. What I mean by this is Dragon Age is a dark medieval fantasy with 2024 comedy slang and language that is almost instantly immersion-breaking whenever you hear it. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's glaring, and it usually happens when interacting with the companions. Companions in Dragon Age have always been one of the highlights, and if I'm honest, it's been one of BioWare's biggest strengths over the years, not only in this franchise, but also with Mass Effect. However, in Veilguard, it was extremely difficult to form any sort of personal connection with them because of the way they were written. That's not to say there were no moments I didn't enjoy, because there were. It's just that these were the exception and not the norm. The lack of character depth or development for companions led to me not really caring what happened to them or what choices I made with them. Choices, by the way, that seem to not really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things after having seen all of the endings myself. Narrative and writing aside, the core of any game is its gameplay loop, which is the combination of mechanics, combat, character progression, and other systems. Here is where I enjoyed Dragon Age The Veilguard the most out of every other aspect, which is something that we mentioned in our hands-on preview from our video in September. The combat of Veilguard appeared to have a very solid foundation with large skill trees that allow for varied playstyles, dynamic movement and functions for the player character, and loot systems that do and can enhance and strengthen builds. I found myself looking forward to combat in the Veilguard even with its other issues, and it quickly became the strongest aspect of the title aside from its stunning landscapes and the performance of the game as a whole. Unfortunately, the further I progressed into the Veilguard, the more I started to realize the combat, while flashing and fun, which it was, had very little depth to the banal enemy designs that were repeated over and over. Most enemies and bosses were just copies of others I'd already fought, and most would just do 1 or 2 attacks or stand there and do nothing. A lot of this is hidden behind the number of enemies that the Veilguard throws at you at once and behind phenomenal class abilities that are over-the-top satisfying and feel great, so that you can't actually see with your eyes what the enemies are doing in a very smoke and mirrors type of way. Eventually, this did begin to wear on me as a combat enthusiast and someone who loves to tinker with builds and playstyles, and I began to think my time engaging in this tinkering of sorts, which I did enjoy immensely to that point, was wasted because I was not being challenged by interesting enemies. Leveling up in Dragon Age The Veilguard entails putting skill points into your skill tree, but it seems like you have no other real customization of your character beyond the equipment you decide to use. This streamlining is nice for those looking for an RPG light experience, but will likely not satisfy many returning fans. Itemization is a bit of a sore point for me in this title as well, because you're not really rewarded for your exploration, and at the same time, all you feel like you're doing is looting. There is so much loot in Veilguard that you have to constantly stop to pick it all up, and while most of it is just currency or crafting materials, those with OCD or FOMO like me will feel obligated to do so, which becomes frustrating while rarely offering much of a reward. Exploration of the game world is both beautiful and underwhelming. The detail of the landscapes is phenomenal in most areas, and sometimes I just stop to look at them. But when exploring cities and towns and trying to speak with NPCs, I often found that no one could be interacted with, and if they could, it was of no real meaning or value and didn't enhance the gameplay in any way. It almost felt like they were props on a movie set, but not actually part of the game. Again, smoke and mirrors. And when exploring new areas, this has also been oversimplified to the point that NPCs tell you how to solve puzzles within seconds, and these same puzzles are used time and time again throughout the whole game as if BioWare could think of no other puzzles to add to the game. You begin to anticipate where all the loot is because it's the same every time, and at some point you either stop exploring out of tedium or you just get frustrated having to loot more gold from the 50th coin purse on a given quest. This is all such a huge shame because the Veilguard runs more smoothly than any title I've played this year, and I've experienced no bugs or game crashes whatsoever. Technical issues can often spell the doom of a title even if it's phenomenal in other areas, and Veilguard has set the bar for future titles in this regard. It's clear that they had the budget and technical expertise in order to make this project happen, but it seems a clear vision prevented it from coming out the way we all hoped it would. Now, taking all of this into account, Dragon Age The Veilguard is an average action-adventure RPG light cosplaying as a Dragon Age title. Had they been honest about their offering, the backlash surrounding this title likely wouldn't have happened, but then again, they likely wouldn't have sold any copies either. The reality is that established IPs sell, and Dragon Age is an established IP. For all of those who think BioWare is finished, guess again. I cannot see them making anything beyond Dragon Age or Mass Effect moving forward, because at this point, it's a product, something to be serialized, mass-produced, and monetized as much as possible. I expect we'll get a similar direction with Mass Effect. And this brings us to you, the player, and whether you should buy this game. A few days ago, we told you to wait for reviews and see how the average player was taking to the title, so you're not influenced by marketing tactics or perhaps shady review code distribution. As it stands right now, that advice was unfortunately very unhelpful, as review scores have become a ridiculous battleground for this title, and hilariously, Dragon Age The Veilguard sitting higher on Steam user review scores than Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. You heard this correctly. Apparently, Dragon Age The Veilguard is a better game than Shadow of the Erdtree on Steam. But on the other end, Metacritic user review scores are equally as silly, with a low that no game should deserve unless it frankly does not run. With this in mind, I'll assume that you follow this channel because you love RPGs. That's what we do here at Fex for Life. We are an RPG channel. You likely have enjoyed Dragon Age in the past or games similar to it, and if you haven't bought it yet, then you probably don't have the money or cash to throw out if the experience isn't going to deliver, and that's probably why you were waiting for reviews. My verdict for this title is that it's a rather firm meh. You can like it, it's like junk food of enjoyable media, and sometimes you just really want a snack. Sometimes you want to eat badly because you can. McDonald's is not great food, but sometimes you crave McDonald's, and you might in this case, and that's totally fine. But as I was playing it, I found myself finding reasons to take breaks or do other things, and eventually I realized that I must not be invested in this game because I stopped playing it over and over even though I had plenty of time and opportunity to play. The biggest draw of this game is to see the story of Inquisition to its conclusion, and that is an incredibly strong pull that review scores probably won't talk a lot of people out of, and that's totally fine. I know myself, I probably couldn't have been convinced to not buy this title simply because of that. However, this shouldn't be the most compelling reason to buy this game, and once the smoke and mirrors wear off, you start to see the movie set for what it is. Dragon Age The Veilguard is a casual and rather uneventfully enjoyable experience with few emotional highs and a good dose of cringe. That said, dedicated fans of this should probably play this game at some point, though I would probably recommend getting it on a sale. So that wraps up our Dragon Age The Veilguard review video. I hope you guys learned exactly what I thought about the game. I tried to be as clear as possible while also being respectful as possible about this game. This is a game that was not what I wanted in terms of a Dragon Age title, but I still did find enjoyment in certain areas of it, and I definitely can see how other people would as well. But I want to know what you think. Are you going to be playing Dragon Age The Veilguard? Are you going to be waiting for a sale? Are you never going to touch it at all? What's your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below.